All right, everybody ready to get started? It's nice to see y'all again. How's your week going? Busy? Yeah, I bet you guys probably have a lot of work for this class, huh? How many of you guys chose to do the optional extra credit? Oh, hey. All right. Good job. What'd you think about it? Yeah.
I have a question.
Hit me.
So you put the additional problems on Blackboard. You're supposed to submit it through there, correct? Because you put you had it in my quiz form, and like I typed and then submitted it.
Did you read the instructions? Huh?
I did the same thing because I just thought it was like an online thing.
Didn't it say handwritten?
It's labeled like a quiz.
Didn't it say handwritten in the label of it? It did say handwritten, so that's kind of what it said, so that's what we'll go with.
So if you didn't do that, we get no points.
Well, you got to do the whole assignment, and so if you did that and you have it ready right now at this moment, because I'm a nice guy, and none of you guys think so. Just kidding. Because I'm nice. I'm supposed to laugh at that. Yeah. If you print it right now, we'll count it. But it's got to be done right now, or it doesn't count. So go to the department office, go to the library, go chase it down, snag it. This way we'll help you out so you don't get hurt. But this is a really good point. Read the instructions or you're accountable for it after this. Does that seem like a pretty fair shake? Okay, yes.
So I will just point out, just because I made that same mistake, I wrote them and typed them in on there because I thought maybe you wanted to do it in 2 places. Then I went back to handwrite it and my answers weren't there anymore. So you can't look at your answers that you submitted online through the thing, so you can't even print it out if you really wanted to print it out.
I can probably change that right now. Yeah, Lindsay.
I'm just looking at it and 20 people did that, so I don't know if you want...
20 people?
Yeah, I don't know if you want 20
All right.
people all to leave right now to go.
Hold on.
I also did.
I'm trying to help you guys out here. Let's see what we can do. Because it's possible I might be wrong. I might have thought I put some instructions. Maybe I'm wrong. That's cool.
You did put it, yeah. So I went back and...
You're not helping them out? No, I'm kidding.
Sorry.
No. It's cool. We'll figure it out. Okay, so let's take a look. We are looking at Blackboard for the thing. Exam 1, extra credit opportunity questions, right? So for you guys who might not be able to see in the back, what this says here is for being handwritten per the course assignment posted to Blackboard. That's why I might be a little frustrated right now. Does that seem like reasonably fair? Okay. So what do you guys think is a fair solution right now?
Can we print it? I don't mind printing it.
Yeah. Yes?
Is there a way that you can just open the extra credit quiz to show our answers so then we can write it down real quick and then that would just solve it?
Yeah, that's what I was about to
Oh.
do, but I didn't I thought it was 2 people. I didn't realize it was half the class. So, I mean, if I have half the class leave to go print this, or do whatever, then then you're gonna miss the class. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna miss a chance to do the class participation points accruing today and all that. Let's see if we can find a way that we work that. What's some creative ideas you guys would have as a solution here? What do you think's fair? I can think of a couple ideas, but I want to see what you guys think. Yeah. We could just turn it into the department office by 5. If you're willing to accept it. Yeah.
Just let it slide, just once.
That's an idea. It's an idea. Might not do it, but it's a good idea. Okay.
Maybe for the people who weren't here on Monday, like, if they could like go print them or turn them in late, some of the people who were here. No?
That is an idea, but I don't know what being here has to do with reading that. You know, so how about if we get done at 3:50, right? Okay. Let's say that you can print it and turn it in by 10 after 4 at the department office, in my mailbox. It gives you 20 minutes, that's enough time to run, print, and run back, and not excessive time to go rewrite something that maybe somebody didn't do. So I want to be very respectful of the people who followed the instructions and who did the assignment, which I think is most of you guys. And so I don't want to be disrespectful to people who did the work, and now they might feel like, oh, somebody didn't do it, now they have time to go write the same thing that I just stayed up all night trying to do. You know what I'm saying?
But if they don't have the book, then they can't, because you need page numbers, don't you?
Or timestamps. So I want to be respectful of everyone here. When really we don't have to really honor any of that at all. I mean, we can just say it's do as is. It's very, very, very clear. So let's aim for that. Does that seem pretty good? Give you a solid 20 minutes. Any vetoes or other ideas? Because
I don't carry cash on me, so I don't have the money to print.
Or maybe, can we do handwritten also? Just write what you already typed up?
absolutely. That's 20 minutes. They can do that.
Yeah.
And absolutely. I mean, I can't be accountable for who has cash to print something that they should have written in the first place. I think I'm being extraordinary generous. I'm really trying to help you guys out here.
I think a lot of people were just second guessing themselves, because even though they read it, it was in test format, so we all kind of freaked out a little bit, kind of thing.
I understand that, but when in doubt, trust the instructions. I think that's pretty reasonable. And I think we have a pretty reasonable solution. Right? You don't need a dime to write out in 20 minutes, right? You don't have to print it off. So everybody wins? Is it better than a 0? Yeah.
So you're gonna open the quiz after we're done with the lesson?
I'm about to do that right now.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Everybody good? Everybody else who followed the instructions, please turn the assignments in. And you have a chance towards that direction of the room. Okay, so that should be accessible, but you shouldn't be looking at it now or through the rest of the class, because we're here to take care of class stuff, and I want to make sure that we're all kind of on task and focused, because we're actually going to be learning new stuff that you're also going to be tested on. So I really want to kind of like keep us on together here. So thank you guys, for those of you guys who did that. I think that's, you know, I'm always looking for feedback on what your guys' experience was with that. So what did you think about the exercise? Was it a waste? Did you find it useful, educational? What did you think, man?
I always find it hard to study for the first test like of the quarter because I don't know how the professor's going to set
Yeah.
the exam. And so like after, I wasn't upset with my grade, like wasn't too upset with my grade, but going back and like re-looking at the questions and then the extra questions you posted were like super helpful to what to look for
Yeah.
more. I found it super helpful. I wish I would have like studied that way before the test, but I really like enjoyed it, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. What's your name?
Chance?
Chance. Okay, cool. You sent me a meme today, didn't you?
I did.
All right. I haven't seen it yet, but I look forward to
I
checking it
don't
out.
know if it works, but.
All right.
okay.
I think it'd be cool. All right, so yeah, so that was kind of what I was hoping for. I always figured it'd help me learn stuff too. Any other? Yeah, Rosie.
I figured out like stuff that I didn't like studying, like there was stuff that I was just not wanting to pay attention to, so it helped pinpoint that I kind of put that off when studying, it's not interesting.
Yeah, yeah, good insight. Any other thoughts or experiences on the project? Yeah.
I thought it was really helpful too, just because sometimes when I do the readings, I tend to, you know, I read it, but I don't pay as much attention to the small details, so having to go back, I'm like, oh, I guess that's pretty important.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I find that too. And, yeah, Myra.
Oh, sorry. Also just kind of like realizing how I misread the questions. Sometimes, like I would read it and I misunderstood what it was saying. So like I missed probably one of the easiest ones was like the gyri and the sulci. And because it said bridges, I thought of bridges as like, because I was thinking of it as peaks and valleys and I didn't like actually look at it as how it says in the textbook. And I missed that question because I thought of it differently and I didn't read it from the textbook. I was just like, oh, I know that this is the peaks and this is the valleys. And I only had that terminology and I didn't look at the textbook. So if I would have just looked at the textbook and had like both scopes, I feel like I would have gotten it correct.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like interesting to look at how like I read it and then going back and looking at it, I don't know, it was helpful essentially is what I'm trying to say.
Cool. Yeah, that's really good insight too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that stuff, same thing for me all the time when I'll go back and recheck stuff out. You know, and hopefully that helps to, I'll get you in 1 second. I like your sweatshirt, by the way. Is that UC Davis?
No, it's
What?
my high school.
Oh, it looks like
I
UC
have
Davis.
I hate wearing high school stuff.
Man, I
made sure it didn't have my year on it, too.
Oh man, it was like crunched together. It looks like it says UKaipa,
No,
but the U and the C of U, or the U, so UKaipa is YUC, but I can only see the UC and then the A because it was folded, and so it looked like it said UC Davis and it's lettering, and I was all excited because I went there and
I wish.
yeah, you know, I still got my high school wrestling shirts. I still wear them all the time. I'm like a huge dork. So.
I allowed as long as it doesn't have my high school year. I think in high school you wear your year when you're a senior. They're like, hey, I'm this year, I'm graduating this year. After high school, you're like, yeah, I don't want anything with the year on it.
Totally. So yeah. So anyways, yeah, I think that you know, when we go through and we kind of revisit how we might have either misread the text or didn't read something or reinterpreted it the wrong way, it can be really, really helpful, especially after the fact, you know. And you know, that was my hope, is to, one, help everybody improve their scores a little bit, but like, I mean, I don't really care about scores, and I mean, I know you kind of have to, but I hope you don't. I hope you really care more about learning and, you know, deeper levels of knowledge. But I get it. Scores matter too. But hopefully it'll be a really good experience in learning kind of how to learn. Because, you know, sometimes when we can see how we went wrong, we can kind of correct some missteps, and it can help us do better in the future. So maybe some of those insights about what you ladies are referring to from revisiting the text can help for the upcoming chapters, right? You know, did anybody else kind of pick up on stuff like that maybe they'll adopt and for the next sections? Yeah, so you asked about, so sometimes you don't know how a professor's gonna test at first. All that, they're asking about something that was actually the way they framed it in the text, but you just didn't happen to see it that way. So
For me, it was that I was like, oh, well, I know what it is, it's peaks and the valleys, right? So I was like, I didn't think I needed to go back into the text and read it. So I was like, okay, let's move on to the next concept.
Yeah.
And because of that, I didn't read it, and then when I saw it on there, I didn't recognize it.
Yeah, so that can be pretty common, and it doesn't mean you don't know it though, right? Just like, I recognize that, and I don't want you to be penalized for it, so I try to invent these innovations to try to help you get those points back. Because, I mean, you still know it just as good, you just kind of missed it, right? Those things happen. And so think about that for the upcoming chapters and how we're reading stuff, is there a way that, I know what I was gonna say, so that gives us a strategy, right, for the next test. Particularly, it tells us, right, that kind of what I was referring to at the beginning part of the class, which is that I try not to make the test too tricky. I try to actually take them to help you from a bank of questions that come from the same person who wrote the textbook. So the way that team of people thinks about things is how they're gonna ask those questions too. So if you can really dial in, especially maybe even sections that might be boring, Rosie, that maybe you didn't want to read, that maybe wasn't your thing, you thought you could skirt around a little bit, then yeah, right? But embrace that stuff. Because if you can figure out how they're understanding that might also help you understand the way they're asking it on the test and help you to think about it the way that they're hoping that we think about it. See what I'm saying? And then same thing with lecture. So I don't know, I haven't really seen the assignment yet. I don't know how many people refer to the lecture timestamps versus the textbook pages or whatnot, but it's the same sort of thing for me, right? So I'm going to draw from that text to help us clarify and understand it. But as you know, we add some new stuff and we test on stuff that was from lecture 2. And so obviously understanding the way I'm thinking about it and sharing about it with you will help to really target the way that we're going to work the next tests as well. Yes, ma'am.
I think from you pulling it from the test speak, it helps because what we're reading and what we're getting tested on, it's the same language because it's from the same person. So say for instance, like a professor is teaching their way and they're making you read a book this way and they test it their way, it's like, okay, then why am I reading? Because it's two different languages.
No, I mean, I totally agree with you. That's exactly why I try to do it that way. Did you have a question earlier from Ukaipa? I forget your name.
Oh yeah,
Christina.
When I was going over it, I just noticed that the ones that I missed were the correct answer was very similar to my wrong answer. It had parts that was correct, but I had to find the one that was completely correct.
Yeah.
And that's something that I always mess up on, so I'm going to pay attention more on that. Because you're right, it is a language with everything in the vocabulary here. And I messed up the question with the pre-central and the post-central. You picked the wrong one.
Yep.
All that stuff.
Yeah, and I get that doesn't mean you don't know it sometimes, right? And that's why I like these exercises because they can help you to get that credit back and show that you know it. And I don't want you to be penalized too much for it, but it is, like you said, a good chance to usually I throw up there before the test start. Go slowly. Really, there's one or two words that might make the difference between a right and a wrong answer. And remember that we don't need to rush through these because we tend to have lots of extra time when we take them. So yeah, it's good insight to kind of be slow and patient and whatnot. Did you have a question in back? Were you going to say something? Okay, sorry. That's how you move your hand. So yeah, I think this is good. Really good insight. I appreciate the way you guys are thinking about it. Really good growth mindsets, as you might say, right? So, there's no such thing as a loss if you take a loss and use it as a learning experience, because then it's just practice for the victory next time. I think that's a really good attitude to have, and we try to foster that in the class with these opportunities to rebuild from it. And you guys ever fly airplanes?
Physically as a pilot? Or
Yeah. You ever ride with somebody in a little Cessna or something? Yeah.
Like from Chino Airport?
Yeah. Oh, they got cool warbirds over there.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. So I fly little Cessnas, and I've taken a bunch of tests and a bunch of stuff. And the way the FAA tests your pilots is that If you fail, you don't lose your license, you just don't get it. You just go and you can retake the test again. And then when you retake the test, okay, now you're a pilot, big deal. So I failed my instrument test, I think twice, because I passed 99% of it, and then I had to do one thing, which, crazy enough as it sounds, it's called a hold. And all you do is fly the airplane around in a circle. And I've flown in like thousands of circles, but I made a mistake. You know, I thought it said pre-central instead of post-central, and I busted it and canceled it, and I failed that test because you failed one thing. So 90% fails. A 99% on that test fails. You've got to score 100%. Yeah, damn, that's right. And it costs you $400 a shot to take the test. Plus $150 an hour to rent the plane and pay for gas.
That depends on what kind of plane too.
Yeah, and then you got to pay that again to take it again. So when you fail a test, you're really like, dang, that sucks. But what I learned from it is it's not a fail of the test. It's just an opportunity to go and get a little bit more training and come back and try again. And so I try to adopt that from what I learned from that as a student training, and then I had to go retake it. And I flew around in a circle again, and then I missed like one coordinate, and I had to do it again, which sucked even worse. But then you pass it, and guess what? Nobody cares now. And now I really, really know how to fly that pattern. I know how to fly it really good. It's a circle. So I think it can be really helpful, and that's why I kind of try to apply that mindset and that strategy to these tests, because it didn't mean I didn't know how to fly that pattern. It doesn't mean you don't know necessarily what the answer for that stuff is or that you didn't study. It just means that maybe we need an opportunity to just kind of like restudy it a little bit and dial it in tighter, and then you're good. So take that attitude forward, and you'll never have a loss in life if it's always just a learning opportunity for the next victory. It's impossible to fail then, right? You know, so let's see here. I thought I had one more thing about that, but it kind of slipped my mind. Any questions? What'd you fly at Chino? What kind of plane?
No, I didn't fly it, because you said, it was someone.
Yeah,
I honestly don't remember. It's like the smallest one they had with the propeller on it.
Nice.
I don't remember.
Yeah, it's probably a little 150 or something.
Yeah, I think so. Sounds about right.
Is it fun?
I'm gonna be honest, I ate right before the flight.
Oh god.
And the results were exactly what they sound like. I vomited in the plane. Yeah, and the pilot was still threatening me to dive down.
Oh gosh, he shouldn't have done that.
No, he didn't, but like he was like threatening just for fun.
Oh,
and I was
okay.
like, please don't, I already feel it, and there you go. It
Yeah.
was still nice, but wouldn't do it again.
You know, I took a girl on a date once flying right after I got my license, and she threw up in the plane too.
That sucks. I know how embarrassing for her.
Yeah, wasn't a picnic for me either. Yeah. Although, like any good pilot, I think last classroom, and he said to come prepared, so I never fly without some huge Ziploc baggies with me, so when I could see that she was getting sick, I gave her a big old Ziploc bag, she filled it up, we zipped it up, and then we dropped it out.
Oh no!
We were like way over back mountains, Northern California. We were in the middle of nowhere. It's the best fertilizer you could ask for that farmland. Yeah.
Did you go on another date with her after that?
You know, I might have, but it wasn't in the airplane. And it didn't work out real much after that, because then I met Erica, really actually not too long after that. And some of our first dates were in airplanes. She didn't throw up, so right off the bat, you know, she got some bonus points. And turns out she actually grew up riding motorcycles in Stockton, and she was riding street bikes to 200 miles an hour on track days up in Reno and doing all sorts of crazy stuff that I thought she'd be impressed by flying, and she's like, meh. So we had a lot of fun. We actually flew her up to a Willie Nelson concert in Chico one night, and haven't looked back since. So she's been good. Now we do all sorts of flights together and stuff. And we even want to think about a doggy transport flight for Juno. So we're working on some fun ideas. We'll see what we can build in the future. So anyways, yeah, so that's kind of what I learned from flying, how we're applying that back to teaching and learning in the classroom. And we can take what we learned from these particular exercises and use it to improve how we study, improve how we test, right? You know, oh, I know the last thing I was gonna say was just that when you were saying about the pre and the post central gyrus, and it's like, oh, I missed it, I knew it, but then I just had it in it. So one of the things that we know about from learning and memory, and some of the people from my lab are here, we study learning and memory. One of the things we know, this is just like proof about how we learn and remember stuff, is that if you study something 1 or 2 times, you're probably gonna have that experience, which is, it's gonna seem really familiar, but you're not gonna recollect for sure which one it is. But it's gonna seem familiar, because you've studied it, and you'll be like, no, I know this reasonably, like I think, you know, like you're gonna recognize it. But what we wanna do is be able to really recall it. We'll get into the memory stuff later on in the semester, but the idea that I'm getting towards is that 1 or 2 times repetition does not usually do the trick. Unless for some reason you really, really care about that information. In which case, one trial learning is really important, and you can do it really easily. So, the translation of what I'm saying is I really want to use this exercise and the insight that we gain from it to really underscore why I really recommend work with the stuff every single day. If you only go over it once or twice, that's actually probably not enough, right? We want to be fluent with it, practice, talk about it every single day with a study group, with a chat group, with something. The more you work with it, 3, 4, 5 times over the same material, then those little close mistakes are going to get dropped down really low. So, and I say that the same thing from aviation. That's when I failed a test or two, it was because of that. And then once I realized that and I started spending hundreds of dollars on fails, then you get really, really motivated to say, how the hell can I make sure that I really know this? And then you kind of pick up some of these tips and tricks. So, enough about that. Growth mindset stuff, and yeah. Was it also pretty clear that it was just organized very directly from the lecture and the text? Okay, cool. Sometimes people say that it wasn't, and so I just want to use it as an exercise to kind of remind people that it's actually pretty straightforward. So, we'll do that, and if we do stuff like this again, here's something that you might not like. I will add more and more heaviness to the exercises. So the reason I'm going to be doing that, if we do other things like this again, is to incentivize you to not have to rely upon it. Because I want you to not want to have to do it. That sound like a fair shake? Alright, so give yourself this assignment before the test. How about that with your study group? Write a bunch of quiz questions and test questions for each other. Test each other, see where you fall short, and then go and do the same exercise. And think about how much more you learn, because everybody I talk to says, I learned more in the exercise after the test than I did learning it before it. Generally because we're starving for the points and we're really motivated now. So, you know, hack that system. Make a little life hack and do it before the test. Alright, so enough about that. You guys want to how are you guys feeling for your group presentations? That good, huh? How about, you guys want to take a crack at it? Yeah? How about we do it, we can do it together? How about that? Okay, I'll be up here with you maybe. We can all talk about it kind of like as a group. Alright, so you guys all have the slides, right? Okay, so they're going to be the same slides I throw up here from chapter 10, right? Okay, so we'll just kind of walk through them. You guys feel okay with that? Now, what are we going to do about these memes? Who made memes? Alright, alright.
We have like our own slides, like if we could pull them up.
Yeah, sweet. Do you have like a USB disk or something?
They're on Google Drive.
It's on Google Drive?
They're already integrated within the presentation, so as you
Okay.
go by slide, you'll just see the memes as they go.
Oh, awesome. Okay. You want to email it to me or something? Can you send me a link? What do you got? You guys got anything special like that on this side? No. Okay, cool. That's fine. I mean, you didn't have to. We'll adjust for it. Yeah.
Can I open like another window to pull something out?
Of course. Yeah. But yes, ma'am.
So, our groups, we did 2 of the same slides, but we have different memes.
Okay. That works.
So then we'll probably be like, several rows will probably be chiming in as it goes.
I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like I want this to be interactive and like we're innovating here, guys. Like we're like Christopher Columbus out sailing on the ocean right now. We don't know where we're going, right? We just know we ain't going home. All right, so we're gonna try stuff out. Maybe it's gonna work, maybe it won't. We're gonna work together. We're gonna figure out how this funky thing we call vision works. That sound like a pretty good plan? Yeah. All right, cool. You send it to me? Let me see here.
Did you want to send Did you want to send this? You're the one who made it, right?
Yeah, but I think someone included all of it.
Hey Rosie, can you make that link available to anyone with the link?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Either that, or you can just have her sign into her account on the computer to project it.
Did you guys get these?
No luck on the access for the slides?
I think I just invited you to like view it.
Oh,
Or like edit
okay.
it. So hopefully that'll work, 'cause I don't know how to do the link thing.
Well, I have to sign into Google, which I don't know. Just make the settings so when you share it, anyone with the link can view. It's under advanced. Well,
Yeah, we did double of those, that's why. That's fine.
well, I can't access those slides. So,
Does she just go up there and sign into her account?
yeah, you can do that.
Cause yeah, I don't know how it works.
Okay. Thank you. And so as she's going, what's the first thing that happens when light hits rhodopsin?
It changes the
Shape of what?
of the protein
Yeah.
and GTP.
GTP is affected at some point.
Oh,
There's a middle step. Anybody remember what that is?
transducin.
Yeah, there's that funky thing called transducin.
CGMP or something.
Yeah. Well, we get to the cyclic GMPs much later down the road, but yes. So we go from light to rhodopsin,
Transduction.
activates transducin. What happens after transducin from someone in the back? Anyone in the back remember what happens when What does transducin do? The rods or the cones? Bueller? Bueller? What does transducin do?
Conformational change.
Okay, so transducin, okay, sure, it does a certain, well, it doesn't actually, we're not going to call it a real transformational change. We're going to say it's more, it dissociates, right? Something like that. Yeah, we're not going to get into, we don't need to know that level of specificity here, but yeah. And what does the conformational change is actually the rhodopsin channel. The transducin is going to dissociate, right? And what happens when it dissociates? What does it go? What happens next in that stream? In the back. Sorry, you're on target. I just I want to get some. No, you're doing good though. Yeah, exactly. So transducin is going to bind to PDE, right? Or activate PDE. Now, anybody remember what PDE stands for? Yeah, phosphodiesterase. And is it done then? Are we done? That's how we see? No, okay. Why not? What happens after, what does phosphodiesterase then go and do?
It takes off the GMP.
Yeah, so it ungates that sodium channel with the cyclic GMP, right? So the sodium channel is gated by that cyclic GMP. So the cyclic GMP is bound to that channel, it's open. It takes it off, so now the channel closes. So big deal, who cares? Why does it matter that the sodium channel is closed? What happens next?
It would become hyperpolarized.
I'm sorry?
Would it become hyperpolarized?
It does become hyperpolarized, but help me understand what you mean by the word it. What is it that becomes hyperpolarized? Is it the sodium channel? No, it's just the receptor, yeah, just the cell. The cell becomes hyperpolarized, right? Super easy. So that lets the cell become hyperpolarized. What does it mean if it's hyperpolarized? Yes, so the cell's membrane potential is more negative. And what does that mean in a context of our conversation? What's going to happen to its neurotransmitter release if it's more negative?
It's inhibited.
It is inhibited. Exactamundo. So what is that neurotransmitter that's normally being released by our photoreceptors? Glutamate. And so we've learned that glutamate release that's normally happening is now being inhibited. Right? Okay, so that's about where we got to. Now you guys probably had a full plate getting together the slides and the extra credit and all that, so that's why I wanted it due today, so it didn't drag out, so we can really just focus on being able to study that stuff. So, yeah. Okay, so you guys have the floor. What do we got going on here? Slides 22 to 46. This is picking up now where we left off. You guys can either come up here and work the mouse, or you can tell me to. Here we go. Okay, so here we are. What do we got going on? We get. Let's not. You don't even have. You don't have to think about it as a presentation. Let's think about it as a conversation.
Oh.
So.
Sit back down.
No, I mean, you can come back up if you want.
Okay.
Help us out. You know, practice projecting out to the audience. But take the pressure away. Just kind of hang out. Share with us a little bit about what we got going on here.
Well, I had a little bit trouble reading it, but you essentially started off the talk
And I'll put this up a little bit so you can draw on the board with it too if you need to.
Oh. I don't think I have to for my part.
Okay.
But essentially, he started talking about how the sodium channels are closing, and that leads to the hyperpolarization of the receptor. So from what I interpreted, please correct me, is that if there's dimmer light, then there's less hyperpolarization in the receptor, and essentially the brighter the light is, the more sodium ion channels that are closed, right? Therefore, the further hyperpolarized it is. And that's over time, and then as time increases, it goes back to its, I don't want to say threshold, but just back to its normal state.
Would you might call that a resting potential?
Resting potential, yes.
Yeah, all right, you guys know those term, right? All right.
Yes.
Okay, so what's this big yellow line?
The light itself.
Oh, so that's the light, right? So I always got confused by this, and I find it really helpful to sometimes slow down and walk through the figure, because sometimes not, like you were talking about earlier and reading the text and stuff, like sometimes we'll blow past something in the text and we won't actually like slow down and just see where it's going. So one thing, if you guys are ever stuck giving a presentation, we used to actually have to do presentations in grad school. We have to make slides like this and then give them to somebody else, and somebody else had to present them without knowing anything that's on them. Talk about being mortified. That'd be like if you guys had to present those guys' slides right now, and vice versa. So one way to do that is start walking it through and explain to me, here's what we got on the y-axis, here's what we got on the x-axis. So what we're looking at here is basically the electrical potential over time, presumably measured from this photoreceptor cell. And what this big yellow thing is, it shows the time, the point in time at which the light comes on. And it also shows that the light comes off.
Right.
And then we can see the response and the membrane potential as a function of that light stimulus coming on and off. And just like you had shared with us very well, Lisette. We see a relationship here, right? Little bear, baby bear, mama bear, daddy bear, right? Any Goldilocks fans out there? What it shows is that there's a relationship between the stimulus and the response. So a little bit of light, just like you said, it's going to be a little bit of a hyperpolarization, more and more. And it shows this idea, and I think we get to that a little bit later, right? This relationship between the amount, or with the, actually a magnification of response from the sodium channels, right?
Right. I thought you were going to finish, yes.
Yeah. Did I miss anything?
Not that I can remember. I mean, we'll just go more in depth as we go, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to add anything? Yes.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can answer this or not. So because it's the brighter light hyperpolarizes the cell more, how does that, like, does it make the reaction happen faster, or is it just like there's more the CGMPs, like there's like, I don't understand. Is the PD, the acronyms are that, is it the PDE that takes away, there's like more, just takes away more, so more channels are closed?
Yeah, it's a good question, Chance. So I think if, maybe I can rephrase it, is when you're asking, does it change the speed of the response or the size of the response?
Yeah.
It's a really good question, right? That's one of the things that this graph is really useful for and showing. Because we can see speed on time, right? We can see size over here. Now, this is basically time. So this is when the light happens, right? And whether it's dim, medium, or bright, it's all starting to happen right about there, right? So they basically show the same temporal profile. That is, it's not changing the speed because they're all pretty much changing in that membrane potential almost immediately at the same time. It's the size that differs. So it'll recruit more sodium ion or sodium channels to close, but they're not going to close any faster necessarily. It's just there's going to be more of them closed, which means it's going to be more hyperpolarized, which means it's going to be relatively less glutamate that's released.
And you can tell it's not going any faster just because of the fact that they're all pretty much within the same time. So it doesn't matter if it's dim, medium, or bright, they're pretty much, I would say maybe 70 to 80 seconds. That's how you can
Seconds?
tell. Or milliseconds.
Yeah.
Yes. I saw this, and it's in the end on that.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're ever stuck and you gotta give a thing, or you go blank and you forget what's on the slide, that's why it's always helpful to start. Tell your audience what's on the X and Y axis, because you're kind of reminding yourself.
Okay.
And then you'd be like, then you already know it's 10 milliseconds.
That's a good
So yeah, right, they're all kind of like here, here, here. It's all the same time, just about. Yeah.
So does the bright light ever go back to resting potential, or does it stay slightly more hyperpolarized?
Well, like this one here.
Yeah,
See how it comes, it does kind of come back.
but it's still a little bit more hyperpolarized.
Just a little baby bit there, it'll come back eventually.
Okay.
It will reset, yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. All right, did you guys have more you want to cover? You want me to go to the next slide?
Next slide, we each picked like a few slides
Okay,
too,
sorry.
that's why.
Yeah, so you guys got to move me along when we spend.
Oh, okay. Well, there are essentially three processes that affect the visual receptors. The first one is sensitivity. That weak stimuli amplified produce physiological effects, so one photon alone can affect 1 million of sodium ions. And then the integration of stimulus over time. So this is something I personally didn't understand, is that it said it makes the vision slow. But I'm not sure what it means, if you can elaborate on that.
Okay, and what do we got on point 3?
And then the last one is adaptation. So the light, there are different intensities, and we'll actually go over that in the next slide as well, but this is just talking about your eye adapting to different light intensities and what it actually does and what it uses when there's light or dim light versus brighter light, so low or high threshold.
All right, well done. So number 2, this question of integration, what does that mean? All right, so very simply said, would you rather be fast or accurate? Okay, both. Okay, interesting. Sides of the aisle. We have different points of view in debate. Some people want to be fast. Other people want to be okay, so you just want to be accurate, right? Okay, now we're going to go like all crazy philosophical on you. So, I don't know, whatever you're interested in, accurate about something, right? Give me a topic of something you want to be accurate in.
I mean, we could even do the exam. Do you want to take your time getting the right answers or get them right and do it quick at the same time?
Yeah, right? And the magic is you need the balance, right? So if you just want to be accurate in every single question, right? The deep philosophy is that we might not even really know the right answers for some of these questions as a field. They're just what we think that the data shows so far, right? Because we still don't know fully how we understand vision and how we really see the world. Still, there's millions of dollars in grants being put out every year, people trying to figure out how we see. We write whole textbooks about it. People have retired with Nobel Prizes for figuring out how we see, and yet we still have unanswered questions. So if you really want to be accurate on the test, then you're going to be super, super slow, and it'll take you a lifetime to take a test, right? All right, because you want everything to be perfect in exactitude, right? Versus speed, right? And we know nobody here wants to be sloppy and just be super fast. Lisette, I think, hit the nail on the head, right? We want to find that proverbial trade-off. As humans, right, we need that speed-accuracy trade-off that allows us to live in the world, right? Which means we have to guess on certain things, which means that we also have to integrate. So what this is talking about is we want to have really good sensitivity in our vision, right? Because what if when you see Ryan Gosling, you go in there to give him a really solid smooch right on the kisser? Because you're pretty excited, like, oh dang, that's Ryan Gosling. Your visual system told you so. But then what if everybody starts laughing at you because it's a poster of him at the subway? Right? Your visual system's like, you're like, yo, visual system, what's up? Why you gotta get me laughed at in front of everybody in the subway? And the visual system talks to you back, right, in your little inside head conversation and says, yeah, but all the information coming in said that was him. It looked just like him. Right? And you're like, yeah, but I could have used a little bit of help on that. It was him. It just wasn't real life him. So you need to be sensitive enough than the visual system to detect those little things, because the raw physical stimuli is exactly the same. Picture Ryan Gosling, real life Ryan Gosling, they look the same, right? I mean, roughly speaking. So, but we need to be sensitive enough to those little microscopic differences, context, all those little elements that we need to make good decisions, right? So that's kind of a funny example about embarrassing yourself, kissing a poster in a subway, right? That I just kind of cooked up off on the fly here, right? But you can imagine other situations where we, get chased by a tiger in the jungle evolutionarily or something like that, where we need that sensitivity. How do we do that? Well, we've got to integrate all that information, all those little bitty microscopic elements that change, whether it's real or fake, but the same image, right? So that's what's going to make vision take a little bit more slow of time, right? Microscopically slow, because we can still see pretty darn tootin' fast. But we do make mistakes every now and then, right? And we have visual illusions, and we jump to conclusions and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of what this is referring to. So if there's a stimulus that goes over time, like, I don't know, a movie, right? That's a stimulus that goes over time. Then we can still see it, but it takes a little longer for us to really see it with precision. We're talking microscopically a little longer, right? I mean, milliseconds, maybe, not even a full, I should say.
So then over time would be like if I look at somebody and then sensitivity-wise, I know I can recognize that person, but then if I move my head really quick and look somewhere else, it'll take a while for my eyes to adjust. Is that what essentially?
That's a reasonable example. Yeah, that's one way you can think about it, right?
Right.
Let's see here. You guys ever seen the gorilla analogy?
No.
In visual attention? Kind of. Here, we'll show it to you. How many more slides do you got to go through?
I'm done after the next one,
Okay,
but we still have like
yeah.
everyone else.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
want to take it back.
Let's give you the next one here, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about gorillas later.
Okay. So this is going further on the adaptation, where there's a variety of light intensities, and so your eye needs to adapt. And there are two ways for your eyes to adapt. The first one is adjusting your pupil size. So your pupillary response would be to constrict, meaning to get smaller, so that if there's bright light, it won't grab all of the light at once. It'll just get at least a little bit of light once it's going in your eye. And then the range fractionation is that there's different thresholds for the receptors, meaning that the high thresholds, or the higher the light, it would be for the cones. And then the low threshold or lower light would be for the rods. So that's a different way for your eye to adapt with the different light intensities.
Good job.
And then I'm done.
So last class, remember we looked at that pupil and we saw that you have those muscles that can make it big or small, right? That's how it adjusts the pupil size to allow more or less light. Any question? Yeah.
So, when it says range fractionation, so it's like in the low threshold when there's low light,
Right.
you see more black and white, you don't really like pick out all the colors?
Right. I mean, if you remember too, rods are for a dim sensitive and they don't pick up color at all, whereas the cones actually do. They have a higher acuity. So then that can help you remember too the higher and lower threshold. So the higher would be the one that can pick up color, the one that is more light sensitive for brighter light, and that is higher acuity in that way.
Yes.
It's kind of an interesting question. So my dad only has one eye, and he got one eye taken out, and he says that he can't wear an eye patch because it makes him feel darker. Is there any way that he can receive any light, or is it that just because he's missing that part, and that's like that?
That's fascinating. I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
It's really interesting.
I wanted to prove him wrong.
It could be well, I mean, you still could, right? But, and that kind of it could be a cognitive perception thing too. And maybe we'll talk about some other ways that there could be some sort of lateral inhibition or on-off cells a little bit later. Yeah.
That kind of sounds like I know it's not a limb, but like it kind of sounds like phantom
Yeah,
limb.
maybe it could be a version of phantom limb.
I was going to say something along like, you know an eye patch is going to block light, so subconsciously maybe he's
Yeah. So
sensing something that's not.
So how many did any of you guys do slides on edge detection and particularly about like the lateral inhibition? Okay, we'll get those. That also might be part of case too, we'll see that luminance, that is light, darkness, relative amounts of light or darkness, which is kind of what he's referring to, right? Something seems lighter or darker, can be changed based on what the activity is of the neighboring cells. And those signals are going to get pushed into the cortex, of course, through signaling. And that sort of relative comparison can make something seem darker or lighter. And maybe that could be a possibility of what's going on too. Is that a good entryway to where you guys are going? Okay. Good job, Lisette.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see here. What do we got next here? Okay, a little bit more luminance and some threshold stuff. Who's up?
Caitlin.
Oh, Caitlin, what's up?
I don't know.
The other girl, she left.
Oh, did she tell you to come?
I don't know her slides.
I don't know either, to be honest.
Ah, see? I told you we'd have to do this exercise.
Yes.
We'll figure it out. Okay, so let's just take a look, right? So this is all the same information we got from our text. So we're looking at the intensity of the light that's reflected from the objects, right? And over there, we've got different ranges. So what do we got here?
Okay, so I don't know, the way I kind of took it was, this bottom part was just mainly rods, since that's what it says. And since rods are mainly dim light, I don't know, I don't really understand what the numbers were.
Yeah,
So I'm
that's
kind of
okay.
confused on that. And then the top part was, because it's more talking about light things, so like sunny days, and night sports, or sunlight, anything like that, it was just talking about colors. So that's pretty much all I took out of it.
Okay, so what we see here, right, we got this arrow. So you gotta kind of turn your head this way. It says rod vision and cone vision. All right, so remember we talked about night vision? So that's right here. So this just is a relative number, that's all you gotta kind of figure it as. Basically meaning luminance, or how bright does something have to be. So at some point, right, there's a difference between daytime and nighttime. This is that point in terms of when those cells can detect that. So in this case, these are our rods, and these are our cones. The rods are much better at night. The cones don't really work at night. This is kind of the bottom layer of what they're going to be sensitive to. So pretty simple ideas there. Got anything more? Okay. That works, yes ma'am?
Kind of unrelated. So do dogs have like no bones? Do they have like no rod?
Do dogs have what?
Do dogs have like no bones?
Yeah, basically. They have some, but they're very, very few. And they're only of a very certain bandwidth. So they can see only minimum colors. I don't remember exactly what they are because I'm not a dog scientist, but Erica knows. We can have Erica Skype in one night or something. She'll tell you all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, they don't have the same kind of color vision that we have. Yeah.
Kind of also unrelated. I watched like a Planet Earth documentary thing, and it talked about the mantis shrimp and how we only have 3 color receptors, but mantis shrimp have 16.
Really?
But if we don't know what those colors are, how do they know that the mantis shrimp has 16? Like, do you know, like, yeah.
Well, so for one thing, so that's kind of a good question. How would you know this as a scientist, right? So what you could do is you could isolate these cells in, say, a petri dish, and you could see and measure their voltage responses to different luminances, right? Remember we showed that color spectrum yesterday? You would see hypothetically that they would respond at wavelengths that are outside the windows of that color spectrum that we can see. So that would show you one element, either recording that electrical activity from the photoreceptors. You could also even get more granular and say, look at what luminances of lights or not, or the wavelengths that is, that could show a conformational change in some of those proteins, if you really want to get crazy detailed. That's just off the top of my head how you could potentially think of that. So it's a really good way to think about how do we know stuff, right? So how many of you guys think you might be interested in going to grad school? Awesome. It's a good way to go. So when I was in grad school, we had to take these things called qualifying exams, and you will too. So if you want to get your PhD, this is the hardest part, other than, of course, the dissertation and whatnot. But once you pass your qualifying exam, you basically never have to take another class again. Now you just do your research and write your dissertation. It's awesome. Now you are basically kind of your own boss. Pretty sweet spot of life. But you got to pass these qualification exams. It's only 8 or 9 hours of a day of sitting down being tested, and then they grade all your answers and bring you back another day or two in front of a firing squad of professors who sit there and they give you a piece of chalk and a chalkboard and they say, okay, we got a couple hours, we're going to ask you anything we want about anything you wrote, anything you didn't write, anything else that's on your mind. Ready, go. Sounds like fun, right? Anyway, so some of these qualifying exams, some of the questions we got were so weird. They were like, one of them was like, okay, so you're a scientist now, and you're in your lab, and imagine that an alien spaceship lands on Earth and out pops these aliens, and you get to get a sample of some of their tissue and some of their ooze, and you get it in a petri dish, you put it under a microscope, there's some neurons on there, and here's what you measure in their electrical activity, and it looks like this, and they show you a pattern on a graph. They say, now what do you deduce? Which is very much basically the same question you said. You get this shrimp with 16 different things. How do you even know that's a thing? And how do you figure out, what would you say as an interpretation of a pattern in a graph that looks like this? Right? Which there's no spot in the book to go look to answer that question, right? They're testing, can you think? Do you understand the concepts enough to work with it to discover something new? Right? And at the time, I didn't think I was ever going to get wrapped up with NASA or outer space or anything, but now I think it's kind of cool that they were actually testing me on aliens in my graduate degree. So I thought that was pretty good preparation to go to space, actually, because we had to figure out dealing with that, and that's kind of the same idea. So, anyways, yeah.
This is a kind of random question about cones and shrimps,
Yeah.
but do you think with the shrimp having like 12 to 16 cones that they're going to find a way to incorporate that into humans?
It's an interesting question. I mean, they might. I mean, I suppose you can get in some murky waters of genetic engineering. Maybe. I hope not. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah.
But night vision really comes from this illuminance thing that's in the back of the eye from a cow. I dissected an eye before.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like very good night vision.
Yeah, they have like a little reflective element. Cats have it too.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why if you look at them, their eyes will flash back at you really good. Yeah.
So like, because you said they have like 16 cones or rods or whatever, does that mean like they see a lot more color because like they could like sense or like see frequency or like does that make
I actually
sense?
don't know. It wasn't me who said it. She said it. I don't know about the shrimp. I'm just saying. I just answered about how you might know that. I don't actually. I'm not here vouching for the shrimp. Okay. All I know is what Forrest Gump knew about shrimp, which is fried shrimp, gumbo shrimp, baked shrimp, barbecue shrimp. They're all delicious. So, anyways, are we good at this stuff? Okay. Next one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this slide is talking about photoreceptor adaptation, and honestly, I didn't understand this at all.
Okay.
I don't know what it's talking about.
Adaptation is the reason we can see such a wide range of light. The visual system is concerned with differences, changes in brightness, not with the absolute level of illumination. So again, we come to this idea of change, right? Changes. That is kind of like that text message idea we were talking about the other day, right? It's not that you want someone to tell you, I don't know, when your kid's out for a curfew or something. Hey, sure, go out, play with your friends till like 2 in the morning out in like under the bridge in San Bernardino by the gas station. Go have fun, guys. Just text me if something goes wrong. That's not really what your parent says, right? Or like most wouldn't say. What do you think they would say instead? Wait, you're not going, okay, yeah, don't go play under the bridge in San Bernardino in the middle of the night. Okay, fine, fair enough. If you were to be allowed to go, let's say. Let's not use that really dangerous example. Let's just say you're gonna go on an overnight camping trip up in the woods with your friends where it might be relatively safe. Safer.
Run into bears.
Yeah, you could run into bears, but they're not like the methy kind of a bridge, you know? They might say instead, you can go out, explore the world, but send me regular messages. Text me every 20 minutes or every half hour, every hour, right? That way, you know when when it stops, there's a change in luminance. It's very good at detecting changes as opposed to just when the light, just only fire when the light comes on. That's why it's constantly releasing that glutamate, because it has those constant signals being released, and that allows us to also say if it gets darker or if it gets lighter, because you can see an up signal or a down signal, as opposed to just an up signal. See how much extra sensitivity that gives? So now you can actually not detect on-off, which is just level of illumination. You can actually detect when there's changes in it. Does that feel like you're kind of close to where you're aiming at?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, question. Because you said like, do you remember you talking about like less glutamate being produced? In terms of like the vision, what is that doing? Like, when less is produced, like what happens?
Ah, good question. We're going to get into that, sucker. What happens when there's less glutamate produced? Well, it's those bipolar cells, which are the next cells in that chain of communication, they're going to detect that, and they are now going to be activated and start sending some other types of signals out to the retinal ganglion cells. They'll have some friendly contacts laterally with the amacrine cells and the horizontal cells. They can send some lateral inhibition, start a whole new layer of conversation. We'll get there. Good question, though. Does that feel pretty good with what you had in mind? We ready to go next one? Okay.
Okay, so this one's just talking about visual field, and the way I understood it was just, since it says the whole area you can see without moving your head or eyes, it's just like me standing in front of this classroom and only seeing what's in front of me and to the side, that's it. So my view would be you guys and the professor on the side and the walls, that's it.
Yeah, kind of like we talked about last class where we said, you know, you guys all understand this idea of a visual field because it's the area that I can't see when I'm not looking at you, so you can, I don't know, text your boo or something like that. I don't know, or Snapchat or something. But, right, you know that I can't see because it's not my field of view, that's all. Sound pretty good?
Visual acuity, I'm kind of like iffy on it. I
Okay.
don't know.
So the way that you would pronounce that is acuity. So it's visual acuity, and it's referring to how sharp your vision is. Right? So how many of you guys like looking at blurry stuff? Yeah, that's no fun. Right? No. So we want stuff sharp. We want good visual acuity. That's all it's referring to. And so you're going to have really good visual acuity for stuff that you're looking right at, right? But if I'm looking here, I'm looking at constants, I can see you, right? So if you were to like flip me off right now, I could still get mad, right? Kinda, actually, I can see her body there, but I wouldn't be able to tell if she's flipping me off or if she's telling me she's A-okay, right? Because I actually don't have visual acuity there. I can't see the fine-grained detail. She's not flipping me off, is she? Okay. But I can, and you can see this in your own, I mean, no pun intended, you can see this in your own examples, right? So you guys all have a periphery right now, and you can see very clearly what's in the front. But as you move to the sides of your vision, that clarity, that sharpness is also going to fade down, right? And what do you do? What would I do to make her look very sharp in my field of view? Yeah, change my field of view. Go whoop. Now I can see her, but I can't tell if you guys are flipping me off. You weren't, were you? Okay. Now I'm going to be self-conscious about who's flipping me off in class. But you guys get the idea, right? Okay, that's what we got. Yes?
So your peripheral vision, like, would be part of the visual field?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Your receptive field ends where your peripheral vision ends. Right? So that's a really good kind of way to finish this up, right? So when we're talking about the visual field, said another way, it just says the stuff we can see. And then we get into finer detail of it. So it's like visual acuity just means it's all about within the stuff you can see in your visual field, but it tells us that the visual field is not constant. That is, it's not all the same. We can, there's a gradient, and we can see stuff in the middle of our visual field really well. You can still see stuff on the side of your visual field, just not very well. Right? So it's really good for detecting simple things like motion and movement. Why do you think that's useful?
In case you're being attacked.
Yeah.
Inside.
Yeah, in case somebody's throwing a rock at you or a spear or a punch or something, right? You don't need to see how many diamonds are on the ring of that finger on the fist that's about to come smack you in the face, right? You're not trying to count those diamonds. You just need to see that there's kind of a big, grainy, blurry thing moving really fast this way so you can respond and duck, right? That makes sense. Yeah.
So for someone who doesn't have 20/20 vision, would it be because the visual acuity is affected and you know, like if I don't wear my glasses, everything's blurry. So is that because of it, or is that different?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. So you get into like nearsightedness, farsightedness. That's actually, well, it's a little bit different because it's going to be kind of about where that visual field information is projected onto the retina and the shape of the retina.
Okay.
So sometimes you can have the shape of the retina
So
can
like,
be.
say, like if you have astigmatism, like that's in like one eye, it's like the deformity of the shape.
Yeah, and you have to kind of reshape it a little bit. So you might have to push it back a little bit or bring and do stuff like that. Yeah.
So then to kind of go off of that, because of the shape of the retina being circle, kind of folded in, does that mean that the periphery is on the edges of the retina, and that's part of why it's blurry when we're not looking?
Yes,
at
it does mean that. Yes.
Oh.
And are there? I know there should be slides out here floating around somewhere. Somebody should be talking about nearsightedness and farsightedness. Maybe. Somewhere. Okay. Are we good? Okay. Okay. Who's up now?
That was actually.
Huh?
That was Stiller.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think-
that was still you?
Yeah, but she did someone else's
Oh, no.
part.
Oh no, that's not my part.
Oh.
I guess that's the other girl. She's not present.
Okay. Okay, so let's figure this out. Well, so we already talked about visual acuity. Good, 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 good. We got the middle of the center of the retina. We talked about that has the sharpest vision because that's where we have the most cells packed in, particularly those color vision cells. We talked about the optic disc already. That was the last class, right? We talked about that area where all those bundles of nerves, those axons are leaving the eye. And so there can't be photoreceptors there because it's full of axons leaving, right? So we can't really see that area in space that would project onto that part of the retina because there's not actually photoreceptors there, and we call that our blind spot. So the way I think about this, right, so let's think about axons as being wires leaving our computers. Our neurons are computers, right? Unless you have laptops that go on batteries, even then you still need to plug it in. So let's just imagine they all have cords coming from the computers. Those axons are our cords. Now let's say you guys all have a computer with you, and let's imagine that it's back in the Stone Ages when it needed to be plugged in all the time. So you all have computers with you right now, and they all have cords, right? Now let's say we run all those cords out the door to, I don't know, some power outlet in the hallway. You guys following with my example? Okay, now let's say there is a, I don't know, a fire drill in here or something like that, or a free taco truck outside, right? And y'all want to go run out the door to go get the free taco truck, or I don't know, escape the fire drill, or maybe they do both at the same time. But the point is you want to get the heck up on out of here. Are you going to go out the door where all those wires are going from everybody's computers leading out to the power strip? Why? Yeah, I mean it blocks the whole door, you can't get out. So there's no photoreceptors at that part of the cell because that's where all the axons are leaving to go into the brain.
That's the optic nerve.
Yeah, or that's the optic disc. And it will get into that, and I'm hoping that there, yep, here it is. This shows, am I stealing somebody's thunder?
No, slide 29 and 30 were the same person, so
Okay,
you're fine. Thank you.
so I can steal the thunder?
Yes.
Okay,
Please.
yeah.
Mine kind of gets into this, so if you want, I could go ahead.
Oh, please do.
Explain it, because I have to.
Come on up.
This to do my stuff.
That's good. Way to go, Myra.
Yay. Let me get markers, because I may just draw.
Okay.
So it's easier to understand that way. I had to draw a picture for me to understand.
So see how this here is our blind spot? Yeah, well, can't really see that with this marker. You see how it says blind spot here? See how there's nothing there. There's no rods or cones.
So I feel like the easiest way to go about it is there's a picture on the following
next one?
slide. Yeah.
Okay.
Or next one after that, sorry. And then I'll go back. Sorry, one more.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a picture. So what he's talking about, the optic disc, is in this area right here. So these are all the wires he was saying that they're leaving outside of the door. So you can't have anything blocking or like basically blocking, because then it's like it's gonna be additional layers that it has to go through. So essentially there's like all these wires from all the sides coming through here and leaving through the optic nerve. So that's why we have a blind spot right here, because there aren't any photoreceptors here. So if you want to go ahead and we can go back to the other ones. I guess I can control it. Okay, so what he was talking about right here is this 0 point is considered to be like the, let me look at this diagram. Huh? It's a center, yeah. So that's why we don't have, that's why you have all the blue on the outskirts, because that's where you have all the additional.
What do we mean by nasal and temporal down here?
So nasal are the ones that are closer right here. So the periphery that's closer to the nose, so nasal. And then the temporal is, I thought of it as temporal lobe. Your temporal lobe is right here, so they're on the outskirts.
So this is counting up how many neurons are in different spots in your eyeball. You're looking at one eyeball. So imagine that I'm that guy with the pirate patch over my eye, right? So you're only looking at one eye, okay? And all this is saying is, if you pinpoint right in the middle of the eye, that's 0. And you can go to the left part of the eye or the right part of the eye. If you go this side, it's towards the nose, nasal. If you come this side from 0, it's temporal, it's further away. And it's counting up how many cells are there in these different spots closer or further away from the nose. Make sense?
So 0 is what part?
0 is the middle part of my eyeball.
So where the pupil is essentially.
Yeah, it's the middle of the pupil. And then basically what you're doing is you're cutting my eyeball in half.
Right.
And there's a nasal side and a temporal side. So you half point is 0. And then you go, and now you're counting up in both red and blue how many cells there are.
So the cells are like the rods and the cones, and I was just looking at it. It says right here distance. This was not my slide, that's why.
Yeah.
But it says distance from the fovea. So the fovea, there is a collection of, it's cones, right?
Yeah.
There's a collection of cones inside of the fovea, which is why it spikes in the middle part. So this is actually distance from the fovea. So the 0 point was actually, it's actually, in this picture, this diagram is actually the fovea.
The fovea is always 0 point. Yes.
I can't really read the y-axis.
The y-axis.
Yeah.
Okay. So these are just basically, it says receptors times 1,000. So all these are numbers. So that's just as numbers of receptors. So remember when I said you're counting up how many receptors are where? That's the answer to the count. That's all, it's just numbers. So there's a lot of receptors here, there's a little receptors, there's a lot there, and it gets littler. Yeah.
So is the blind spot, because it says it's on the nasal side, is that like why we don't like see our nose?
The blind spot's like directly in, like, you could think of it as the sensor. You want to go back to the picture? That way
Oh
it's
yeah,
easier.
I can see my nose.
Well, I mean, everyone can see the nose, but like, you don't like, you can't see like, I don't know.
Okay, so.
This one?
No, with a picture of the eye. So, the blind spot is, this is your pupil right here, so it's directly to the back of that. So it's like everything, all your information that's being processed and everything is on the periphery of your eyes, and then toward everything from there will get all its wires. So essentially it's like a bunch of like little computers everywhere, and then get all of its wires, all of its information, and go down one area. If that makes any sense at all.
So every single thing you see, every piece of light, when it comes in here, it's going to hit and it's gonna project there. When it's up here, it's gonna hit here, and it's gonna project there. When it's towards the middle, it's gonna hit here, and it'll hit there. Or when it's here, it's gonna follow this line and go there, right? So everything from every spot in our receptive field, right? We were talking about receptor fields, visual field. Every spot is gonna have a spot in the retina that corresponds to where that light is gonna be beamed to, through the lens. We good? Now, there's a spot here, right? Somewhere in here has to be beamed to the spot where there are no photoreceptors because it's filled with those axons leaving the eye. So wherever that spot is the spot you can't see. But that's the beauty, for most people who have two eyes, is the other eye can see that spot for you though, so you don't experience it as a blind spot. Now, if you have a situation where you have an amputation or a congenital, defect where you only have one eye, then it'll actually still be filled in by some other processes, but the other eye can see the area that the first eye can't.
And then I feel like it's also important to note that along this area, so the periphery of the eye, in this area, there's rods and cones all right there. And all the rods and cones, those are just how we know they're neurons, they're cells. So they have axons, and all of the rods and the cones that are here are sending all of their axons, and that's how you make the optic nerve.
Yep.
So that's, I feel like maybe that clarifies it a little bit more. There is also another picture after this where it has. So
we got a question here, and then Rosie had one.
Oh, okay.
Well, I wanted to answer her question why you don't see your nose. It's just adaptation. Since it's always there, you ignore it. But you could see your nose if you really want to see it.
It's kind of like having a husband or a wife. It's always there, so you just ignore it, right? Or kids, right? No, seriously, any of you guys have kids in the mom? They're always like, Mom, 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 right? You don't really detect all those until you hear the really bad, like, Mom! Then you're like, what is it? Now you know it's trouble, right? You can actually tune stuff out, right? I mean, we know this is just kind of, selective attention and, good point. What you got, Rosie? Question?
No, I just didn't think there was a difference between the blind spot and the nose thing, yeah.
So this is like
You wanted
actually
this?
getting in. So this is kind of getting into the things that I actually had to do. So from the other one, if you want to go, sorry.
Back?
Yeah.
Do you want like a clicker so that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, goodness, man, you guys are awesome. Markers,
Markers,
clickers.
There's a, like, if the USB goes in there,
Yeah.
there's a laser pointer right there.
Okay, so that's cool that can work with anything. So this is basically actually getting into the stuff that I covered. The other stuff I didn't really get to cover, but I kind of had to learn about it just to be able to understand what I was doing. Because information builds off of each other.
By the way, do you guys see how useful this is to have in your study groups? Clickers and markers, yes, but like, do this, have these conversations, right? Like, work through this. See how much more you can pick up in information, but also interest and engagement by literally walking figure by figure through what's in the text. And actually break it down and say, what's on the x-axis? What's on the y-axis? Okay, now we know that. Now what the heck is it showing us? What does it mean? And you do that figure by figure through the text, trace it first, draw it out, and then come and talk about it and break it down. Is this not more helpful?
Yes.
Yes. I highly recommend, do that at home and with your friends and with SIs and everything, yeah.
Okay, so this is what I started covering. So mine started, it started talking about rods and cones and everything. So it was talking about the fovea. So this area right here, this little like dip, this is the fovea. And in the fovea there is a constant, so it says rods are absent from the fovea because they're like all around the outskirts. That's where the concentration is. But we have cones. Cones, C for color, cones, they're the ones that process color, so they're mostly concentrated in this area. And then obviously, like I said, that there's the axons, they'll send information this way.
So those would be the cells for your code.
Yeah, so then right here we have our fovea, so then going on to the other picture, so. Magic, okay, cool. So we have the fovea right here. And as you can see, the little bottom, see how they have like the it looks like knives, so the cones. They're concentrated in this area. So this is like the little divot that you saw on your eye. It was divoted in like this, so now you just flip it over. And you could see how all the projections of all the axons are leaving. So this is what, these axons are the ones that are being projected out and making your optic nerve. And then where the divot is not, so not inside your fovea, you can see that there's a concentration of the cones, of the rods, and then we have some cones still scattered around in the area. So another thing that I had to learn about was how the light is coming in. So when the helpful part of having the divot is if the light is coming in directly to the fovea, then there's nothing kind of like getting in the way of the information being processed, versus when the light comes in through over here, like through not the center, it's gonna lose energy as like it's synapsing down. So
Not quite synapsing, but it's moving through
or energy
a
moving
biological
through.
substrate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the energy moving down. So that's why cones, they need the light essentially to be able to see, or rods, they need the light to be able to see the color because of that. So.
Can you elaborate when you say that the energy is going down? So, I mean, light energy, essentially the same, but when you're saying energy, you mean that the energy is higher within the rods, like as it reaches the rods?
So like the message being sent down, so since there's layers, it's not just gonna be like light just going through everything, it's like if there was like walls. So the light is not just gonna go through the wall, like if there was one person on either side, you would have to like tell them, hey, do this, you know, you would have to
So
send a message
imagine you had a bowling ball.
down.
And
That's better, and you threw it through the wall, is that what you're gonna go with?
well, I wasn't gonna talk about throwing it through the wall.
Okay.
But let's say you had a bowling ball and a stopwatch, and you wanted to measure how fast on your stopwatch the bowling ball hit the ground, and you held it up from here, and you measure it, right? Like the old gravity experiments, right? You guys all remember, was it Galileo or something? Right? Newton too, but Newton wasn't at the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? You remember that story? Drop the, okay, anyways, it's not a physics class, but you have a bowling ball, you drop it from here. You do it with a stopwatch, right? Now, that's like going through here, right? There's nothing stopping it, it's just gonna go straight to the ground. Now imagine that this was a big tank of water, and I take the same bowling ball and I dropped it through the water, and I stepped it with a stopwatch again. Would it move faster or slower to hit the ground? Slower, why? There's some sort of substrate it has to go through, right? Is the water going to stop it? Not unless it's frozen. Yeah, ice will stop that real fast, right? So what do you got to do if you're the bowling ball then? Let it go. It's frozen. Okay. Anyways, Disney movie jokes aside. That's all this is. This is just moving slower because it's got more stuff to go through, like the bowling ball dropping through the water. Here it's just, it's just, and we're talking microscopically faster and slower. But hey, that stuff makes a difference. All right, what do we got next?
So this is basically the answer. So why are rods more sensitive to dim light? So we have a few things. So first of all, rods, there's more rods in the eye. So this is per eye. So there's 100 million per eye of rods in your eye versus cones. There's less of them. As you can see, there's mostly just the concentration, and then they're just scattered. Concentration in the fovea, and then they're scattered throughout the periphery after that. So then rods have only one type of photopigment, whereas cones have several photopigments. So the main one, or the only one for rods, are rhodopsin. So rhodopsin is a thing, so it's what makes the rods more respond to light. So rhodopsin is the thing that they use for the optogenetics thing that we had to learn for this past exam. So essentially, when you are inside, so let's say we're inside right here, and then we go directly outside. Our pupils are, as she was saying, they're bigger. so they're allowing more light because it's dimmer. So then when you go outside, the pupil's gonna get smaller because it's sensitive to this. So then you get like that bleaching, like where it's like, it kind of hurts your eyes and you're kind of like, no. So that's kind of with this. I don't know if that made any sense at all. No? Did that make any sense? No?
A little bit. We're talking about dark adapted down there at the bottom?
Yeah, so,
Okay, so-
it's like how you get adapted to light. So when you're in the darkness, to get adapted to it, your pupil will open up because rods are responsible for your black and white vision. So you need more light so the rhodopsin can be sensitive to
So let's say you're in the light. A lot of those rod cells can get saturated.
Yeah, so then that's like the bleaching, right?
Yeah, so well, here's a way to test this. Actually, it was the guy who told me about this was a doctor giving my flight exam for my pilot's license. You gotta go to the doctor to make sure you're not gonna have like a heart attack in the airplane, and make sure that you can see colors so that you're not gonna miss information on a map or something like that. So, anyways, at least I think it was this guy. Anyways, point is, if you want to see the effect of the saturation, how many of you guys ever have to pee in the middle of the night? You most of us do, right? Okay. When that happens, unless you've got a really nifty setup in your bed and you don't have to get up out of it, right? You're probably going to have to get up and get out of bed and go to the bathroom. So, next time that happens, walk to the bathroom, and unless you've got like world-class aim, you've really got to turn the light on in the bathroom, right? Okay. Yeah, so you have world-class aim. And,
I just have to sit down. So like,
Yeah.
I don't have to aim.
well, sure. I mean,
We get your reference though.
you get the reference. Here's the thing. When you're going to pee in the middle of the night, before you turn any lights on, as you're walking through the hallway and you go to your pee, keep one eye covered the whole time. Yeah. And then do your business. And then turn the light off and walk back to bed. And this light or this eye that's had the light on, it's now saturated. And you're gonna be like, and you're gonna have the light. It's gonna go off, and you're gonna be walking. You're going, ooh, and you're gonna stumble and fall in the middle of the night. Wake up people in your house because you can't see. It's saturated. Those dark detecting cells, or that is the dark the rod cells that would otherwise be used to detecting that, they're saturated. So they can't see and you stumble over stuff. Now instead, so you don't stumble and hurt yourself, right, because I don't want you guys to get hurt, turn that light off. Now you're in dark. Let that off, and now you can walk back to your room. And because you'll have little bits of light in the house, you know, from, I don't know, a night light or a alarm clock, those little LED lights. And you will have the sensitivity from your rods to be able to make it back in one piece. You guys follow what I'm saying? Run that experiment. Let me know how it works. Don't sue me if you get hurt. But you guys get the idea. That's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Alright.
So rhodopsin's the reason when you turn the lights on, you feel like that like painful sensation kind of. Not painful, but you feel like you want to close your eyes because of going from darkness to light.
Kinda. That's also just about the pupil too.
Okay.
Your pupil's going to be expanded really wide,
So it's
taking
gonna
a
let
whole
in a lot of
lot
light.
more light because there's not much to work with. And then you turn the lights on, and all this light comes in. You're like, ugh, and so it should shrink back. It's also why if you're wearing night vision goggles, you don't want to turn the light on because then you're going to just shoot it straight through this giant pupil you have at the time. And that's not what we do. All right, good job. What we got next? Okay.
It still keeps going because my slide had like a bunch of stuff on it, so
Okay,
I had to kind of break it up.
Let's push it through. What do we got?
Rod input converges on ganglion cells
Mm-hmm.
in the scotopic system. So then what is a scotopic system? A system in the retina that operates at low levels of light and involves the rods. So
Okay.
that's kind of what we were just talking about.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of converges on
Convergent.
the
Or convergence.
convergence in the scotopic system because there are many rods, so 100 million, how we discussed earlier, and they provide all this information to each of the ganglion cells. That's
Mhm.
basically it. So kind of what we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing is the cods. So it's the so we have a picture right here. So it's basically the constant shifting of the eye that
Slow down, what are we looking at? What are those circles?
So these are the eyes.
From what point of view? No pun intended.
Uh,
How are we looking at it? Like, is this from a bird's eye view down?
Bird's eye view down, yeah, there you go. And then this would be your pupil, and then you're looking at.
Okay, so the retina's in the bottom.
So basically it's constantly shifting, and that causes the image not to disappear. So how I was thinking of it, try to understand it, was it's like your eyes are taking like a million little pictures at one time. And while they're doing that, they have to scan the area. So if you ever look at someone, their eyes are never going to be completely still, they're going to be like shifting. So that's basically what it's doing. So basically eye movement. So a fun fact, if your eyes weren't doing this, the image would eventually disappear. So that's basically what it is. I guess, I don't know if you want to be able to explain it differently, but that's how I try to interpret it.
What do you got?
So people that don't have that, would that be like people that have akinetoxia, how they have the motion blindness?
Could be. Yeah, I mean, you can't see motion, yeah.
With camera, like frames per second.
Kind of, yeah, that's how I was thinking about it, but it's basically, it scans the area, it's more scanning the area, and, I don't know how you want to explain
Yeah,
it.
although there's a real danger in considering it like a camera too.
Yeah.
Because the camera is going to record everything that happens. The eye actually doesn't, at least our consciousness doesn't perceive it. And so, there's a whole rabbit hole to go down. We can have hours and hours of conversation about this that we won't today. But the eye is often referred to as being a camera, but there's a real danger in it because it doesn't detect a lot of stuff, and that's why we have visual illusions. That's why magicians make a lot of money. That's why politicians get elected. Because there's a lot of things that happen that we don't see. Yeah.
Is this related to when you look at an image that's completely colored and you stare at it for a while, you don't shift your eyes or anything, and then you immediately change to the same image but black and white, or the color is still on the image? Is this somewhat related to
That's a little different, and I think maybe we'll get to that in some of your guys' slides, right? Don't we talk about that a little bit, about some of the illusions with the color? Or I forget, maybe this is your guys' slides? Oh, yours, okay.
Alright, so I'm basically done.
Okay.
I'll let you go. This is my last
Oh,
thing.
hey, some memes, alright, let's do
It
it.
was just the memes. It was for the photoreceptors, how I understood rhodopsin,
Okay.
so the photopigment. It's the thing when you go, you were in the darkness, then you go to the restroom, you turn the lights on. Since you were in the dark, you have like that little, you don't want to look. So it says walking outside after the chapel, like squinting your eyes. And then we have the dude from yeah, there you go. See, I love Lord of the Rings, but yeah, and he's like, the light it burns. And then we have had to add Game of Thrones, because Game of Thrones is awesome. It says, brace himself, the light is coming. And then it says, my squint now.
Alright, good job. Good job. Alright, I liked it. What do we got next?
Can we just sit here or do we have to go?
Let's get up.
Yeah. I'll be quick. And then we have like the same similar ones.
You can have the clicker too. I want to press the down button. Okay.
Down?
So the down button, yeah. So we'll get through what we can today, and then next class we'll pick up from where we leave off, so that the other group can come in too, and you guys get a little bit more time. Maybe you see that there's some usefulness in putting a slide thing together like this. Maybe work together as a team and put it all into one file. Maybe ask your other teammates on this side of the aisle how they did that. A little bipartisanship. We'll do that next class if we can't get to everybody's, and we'll just adjust. Yeah.
So in our group, we had 2 people do these slides. How does that work in terms of participation? Like 2 different groups did these exact
So-
slides.
What we did, we split up all the slides in between 3 different little groups, and then at the end we were going to come together and combine them all. And and then there was confusion on who did what slide, so a pair of slides were done twice. And then the people that were absent that day did the first pair of slides that were not done, if that makes any sense.
So essentially, the people, we did the beginning. And then everyone else did the repeats of these following slides.
Okay, so,
That's why I don't understand the question.
me neither.
Okay, let me show you an example.
There's just
Is
like
this something we
two
could,
sets of the same
is
slides.
it a question about just how Grady's gonna work? Cause I can just handle that on email or something. We can, like, let's use the time we have to really dig into
Okay, yeah.
the details, you know, like, let's dig in. And we can talk about administrative stuff whenever. Okay,
Okay, so basically I just did lateral inhibition. So brightness is created by the visual system, so just like keep that in mind. So lateral inhibition is a process where interconnected neurons, either connected by interneurons or by axons themselves, it's just a process where they inhibit their neighbors to produce contrast. So this picture is kind of helpful. So if you think of like all three of these are side by side.
are they neurons?
Yes, these are neurons with their axons, right?
Are the red dots the somas?
Yes.
Okay, just trying to, like, this is really helpful, cause sometimes, you know, I just,
So yeah, so these are all neurons. So cell body is axons, cell body is axons, cell body axons. So think of these as three separate neurons. These are their interconnections. Again, can either be interneurons or like full-on axons. So think of if a stimulus is coming, so here's the stimulus and it affects all three of them. With lateral inhibition, if B, just for example, there's no specific, but just in this example, if B gets the stimulus either strongest or first, it has the ability to inhibit its neighbors. So it's kind of explained down here. So the stimulus can be sharpened if B sends lateral signals to neighbors A and C, so the top and bottom, and tell them not to fire, thereby inhibiting them. And then it's just used to sharpen signals to the brain.
And this creates a contrast.
how does it create a contrast?
By the lateral inhibition. So by dimming the other cells, the same color could become darker.
So I can show this picture.
Ah, the
So this is what
Mueller-Lyra
she was talking
illusion.
about.
Yeah.
So kind of exactly what she was saying, that it creates contrast. So shading around a patch of light affects the perception of brightness. So back to the fact that the visual system creates brightness.
So what do we mean, what's the illusion here?
Okay, I'll be honest, I didn't fully understand the illusion.
All right, this is good, this is good,
But
yeah.
if you're,
It's the lines, right?
Yes, it's the lines.
so all these are the same, or one color, so think of them as strips of the exact same color. So this is completely white, this is one shade of gray, but if you look at it, depending on how you're seeing it, it looks like it's, what's the word? It looks like it's lighter on the inside of each of these.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's darker on the right side. However, apparently it's one uniform color. It says on here, like on the picture example, it says that the two tiles in the middle are the same shade of gray. I don't know if you can explain it, but they don't look like the same shade of gray. So I don't know if it's just like my eyes.
You have to look at it at a computer, at a smaller image, and you cover the line in the middle, and they are the same color.
So those two are the same?
Yeah, the two middle ones are the same color.
Okay, so how she was saying, like with the contrast and how it creates, like it makes it lighter right here. So these are actually the same color, but due to lateral inhibition, they look like different colors. I don't know if that means more.
I feel like I get it, and I just need one more piece. So why is it because of lateral? We might have to just repeat it. Why lateral inhibition?
So I wasn't entirely sure the why portion of it. Like I just kind of ended up getting down the concept of what lateral inhibition is. It basically just stops the neighbors from sending extra signals, so that way just one neuron sends the signal to the brain. And so like right here it says the fewer neighboring neurons stimulated, the more strongly a neuron responds.
Yeah.
So I wasn't entirely sure how that affected this
So let's
in
say
particular.
that, if you go back to your neuron model, one more slide ago. When this is stimulated by light, right, this is wants to send a signal to the brain. But every time this sends a signal, let's say it also has arms that branch out and says, it tells, we talked about this the other day actually. Every time that you talk, you also send a sideways signal and tells your friends and neighbors next to you to quiet down. so that your voice stands out a little bit more. So that's what essentially every neuron is doing, and I don't know your slides. Let me just indulge me for 1 second here. I think I have a good one on mine. It's basically here. Did you guys have a slide like this? Okay. So I'm gonna jump in because this kind of helps us to understand that. Okay, we've got a solid 4 minutes. So this is going to show. So remember how I talked about the importance of walking through basic X and Y axes to help people understand and say, even on the neurons, say, okay, so these little boxy things are neurons, and here's what the red circles are. They're the somas. So let's start down here, like Drake at the bottom. Okay, and our y-axis here is how fast are our neurons firing, and our x-axis here is basically the position, or physically where those ganglion cells are. So here we're talking about ganglion cells firing into the brain, okay? And the light is hitting these photoreceptors, and they go to the bipolar cells, and the bipolar cells have these lateral inhibitions. So every time it fires and tells this to turn up the volume, it also says shh to its neighbor. See the negative sign? So that happens for every one. So when the light hits this cell, it fires, tells this one to speak up, and then says shh, shh to its neighbors. Okay? So look, this is in the dark and this is in the light. We're talking about where you get that illusion. So here, the light is all the same, isn't it? And the dark is all the same. But why do these ganglion cells fire differently? They're experiencing the identical physical stimulus. So this should be down here a little bit. Why is it bumped up? And this should be equal to this, because it's equally dark. Why is it bumped down? It's because right at this edge, there's these signals adding and subtracting from its neighbors, the lateral inhibition. Right? So this is going down a little bit here, this one. Because the light is here, so it's more active, which means it has a bigger inhibition, it has a bigger shh, versus this one just has a little shh. So the bigger shh keeps that one even lower, okay? And because this is activated, okay, this one's going to get even bigger. But it's going to send another signal here, which doesn't have the same inhibition on it the other one does, and you can see how these sort of algebraically work out. And that is why you'll see that edge, because this is about the edge here, right? That's that illusion, because it gives you the illusion of differential neural perception, because the neurons are firing differently than what reality kind of is, because of that lateral inhibition. Does that help a little bit? Okay, so here's what you should do. Go home, Google that, or go into YouTube, and they'll have videos of people explain it. There's people who explain stuff really good there. Lots of little clips and videos, and see if you can dial that home. We'll pick up from that next class, and then we'll finish off on your guys' stuff, we'll dive into your guys' stuff, and just like our syllabus said, we will adjust to the pace of class. Okay? So we'll stick on vision next class. Does that sound like a good deal? Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Really good job. Yeah.
I'm still kind of confused though, because I've looked up videos and they all say the same thing. So in terms of contrast, oh sorry, I forgot that's numbers. So in terms